Hey, what's going on, guys? You guys have tuned into Tough Teens, and on this channel, we talk about the troubled teen industry, teen boot camps, behavior modifications, schools, and more. And this is a series of wiki videos we're doing where we cover kind of different programs within the WASP program and outside of the WASP program. To date, we've covered Spring Creek Lodge, Paradise Bay and Samoa, Jamaica, a number of programs. In today's video, we're going to be talking about high impact in Tecate, Mexico, Baja, California. And first, we're going to cover the history and the background. So, High Impact was a WASP program slash boot camp founded by Michael Rodriguez and Dace Golding. Well, the year is unknown. It is likely that it opened around the same time as Casa by the Sea in 1998. It was located just outside Tecate, Baja, California, Mexico, but the exact location of the campus is unknown. However, an anti-WASP web forum began an investigation into its location in 2008 and was able to locate an area that they suspect of being High Impact's campus around 5 to 10 miles south of Tecate. However, this location has not been confirmed. According to its archive, High Impact claimed to offer defiant teens a 28-day plus experience that is well defined and structured. They claim that this experience is designed to help teens replace destructive attitudes and behaviors with new perspectives and direction in their lives. In reality, High Impact was an extremely abusive and torturous boot camp and behavior modification program that was used as punishment for teenagers at other WASP facilities that were deemed resistant. Although marketed as a 28-day plus program, teenagers were often kept there much longer, sometimes as long as 6 months. Although the owners have denied any association with WASP, almost every single teenager at High Impact came from other facilities run by WASP. A number of survivors report being sent to High Impact from programs including Spring Creek Lodge Academy, Cross Creek, and a nearby Casa by the Sea. In addition, contracts made before 2002 between parents and children at WASP facilities mentioned High Impact as an option if the child did not progress in the programs. After 2002, the contracts only mentioned Tranquility Bay. Further, High Impact's billing is controlled by R&R Billing, a company owned by Robert Litchfield, WASP's founder. In 2001, High Impact was raided by Mexican authorities amid allegations of child abuse, neglect, and abhorrent conditions. In late 2001, early 2002, High Impact closed, and the teenagers were either returned to their parents or sent to other WASP programs. The founders and notable staff of High Impact, Michael Rodriguez is also known as Papa Miguel by survivors, was the co-owner and director of High Impact. He originally worked at Casa by the Sea with his wife, Ali Hernandez. Miguel is reported to be a PDF, we got to talk carefully here on YouTube, and very violent individual. He is also alleged mastermind behind the infamous dog crates, as well as being reported to have sat on top of kids as they were being restrained in painful arm/leg lock and stress positions. He has been accused of several major crimes against children at High Impact, including assault, rape, and attempted murder. After High Impact closed in 2001, both Miguel and his wife, Ali Hernandez, were invited to go back to work at Casa by the Sea, where Miguel was responsible for more assaults on students, and Ali assisted in the admissions department. Dace Goulding. Dace was the owner of High Impact. He was also owner of Casa by the Sea. He first began working for WASP at Paradise Cove in Samoa. We covered him in the Paradise Cove wiki. After Casa by the Sea was closed in 2004, Goulding, along with an old high school buddy, Rich Darrington, opened another program called Darrington Academy in Blue Ridge, Georgia. We covered that one as well. Darrington Academy was closed and criminal charges were pressed against Rich Darrington for assault and battery of a minor. At some point, he was working in a public school, but currently Goulding reports to be coaching Little League in St. George, Utah. The program structure, High Impact claimed that its program was based around the 3 R's: reality, respect, and responsibility. In reality, the program was designed to punish teenagers who did not follow the rules in other WASP facilities. It was intended to motivate the teen to be more positive regarding the objectives of the behavior modification they were enrolled in the programs for. According to statements, they were transferred, some smuggled into Mexico, where they were taken to High Impact. The concept of the program was to earn points by running laps while listening to a cassette tape about Alcoholics Anonymous on repeat several hours a day. In addition, they had to avoid getting any consequences, which could demerit nearly a full day's point earnings. The entire program centered around a teenager having to run a certain amount of miles. They did this by continually walking in a large circle in a fenced-in area of the facility. The teenagers needed to complete 2,000 laps in order to finish the program. although there are reports of teenagers being forced to complete as many as 4,000 to leave the program. If a teenager resisted or broke even a minor rule, laps could easily be deducted and they would be held at high impact longer. It is reported that 80 laps would be deducted for each infraction, and if a student amassed my computer battery is about to die there. And if a student amassed 3 infractions in one day, they would not be able to earn any points for their laps that day. Once a teenager completed the program, they were often sent to other long-term WASP facilities. Survivors specifically report being sent to Tranquility Bay, Cross Creek, and the Academy at Dundee Ranch and Casa by the Sea, to name a few. Daily life. After the teenagers were woken, they had 10 seconds to fold their blankets, roll up their mat, grab their toothbrush, and be in line. If they did not do this in time, they were forced to do 100 push-ups less than 30 seconds after waking up. If the team couldn't do the push-ups or refused, they were sent to the dog cages and R&R positions all day. Once they were in line, they had to perform the high-impact family head count, which consisted of screaming that phrase and each girl individually calling out a number. They were allowed just seconds to brush their teeth and a minute to use the toilet. If they took too long, they were punished with push-ups. They were not allowed to flush the toilet until all the teenagers were done, and the person with bathroom duty that morning would fill a bucket over water and flush it all down. After bathroom time, they put their toothbrushes away and lined up again, heads down until all the teens were done. Afterwards, it was time for breakfast, which consisted of a single cup of oatmeal. Each detainees were given between 30 seconds to 1 minute to use the restroom, which were the one time during the day it could be used without consequences being applied. Due to that fact, a lot of the detainees were forced to urinate and defecate in their trousers and wash the clothes instead, reported by survivors on forums. After breakfast, teenagers were forced to perform chores, according to a survivor, consisted of unnecessary labor like raking the sand in specific patterns, sweeping and mopping the concrete, and finger picking for small pieces of trash and rocks. After chores, the exercise started. The running walking took place within the facility. When it was raided in 2001, only around 3 years after it had opened, the concrete had been worn down where the detainees had run/walked during laps. Students were forced to listen to the same Alcoholic Anonymous tapes for hours on end and being forced to take multiple choice tests at the end of each tape. Survivors report having to go and do laps around 4 to 5 times per day. Lunch consisted of a cup of rice and beans. Before dinner, they were allowed to use the showers, which had only cold water and no soap. They were also allowed to wash their clothes by hand. Dinner consisted of a chicken breast, all of which had to be eaten. Otherwise, it would be viewed as an attempt of suicide by refusing to eat. There were 2 types of sleeping quarters. Dog cages were used by at-risk detainees under suspicion of running away. The other detainees slept in a hall on concrete with only a blanket as cover. Although reports vary, it is reported that on average, each student lost around 35 to 65 pounds in approximately 60 days. Anytime the teens were in the tent, they were expected to endure stress positions called structure. Sitting structure meant that your legs were crossed and your hands were behind your back, your head was down, and you were not allowed to move, even the slightest twitch. They would have to maintain these stress positions for hours on end through tapes and all day bad weather, even during meals. Rules and consequences. The program at High Impact was extremely rigid and had very strict sets of rules. Some of these were forbidden by rules, as reported by survivors, were as follows: use the restroom more than once per day, talking to other detainees, looking anywhere but the ground without permission, any movement, even slight, without permission, shouting, burping, rolling up sleeves, sitting or standing without permission, shifting your weight when sitting down, scratching an itch without permission, clearing your throat without permission, licking your lips, refusing to eat, leftovers, even vomit were required to be eaten, attempts at escape. If a teenager broke any of these rules, they were given a consequence. Consequences were punishments including annulment of miles ran that day, being forced to carry a 40-pound bag of sand while walking the miles, being confined to the dog cages during the day in a sitting position, being confined to the dog cages during the day in 4-point restraint lying on the stomach, spread eagle with their chin on the ground, palms up, and legs bent upward. Sometimes residents were forced to lay down with their at the slope down side of the cage, which would cause blood to rush to their heads and cause them to lose consciousness. According to a survivor at High Impact, the staff liked to get creative with their punishment. One was to instruct all of us to draw lines in the sand with our toothbrushes. After finishing a large area of sand, the staff would inspect it, deemed our lines not straight enough, step all over our lines, and told us to start over again. Another punishment they would use is to instruct girls to clean the bathrooms with their toothbrushes, and of course, we still had to use them after. One particularly grueling punishment was to dig holes in the ground about 5 feet deep and 5 feet wide using only a spoon, and having to run uh, the hot desert sun beat down on you until you were literally delirious of heat stroke. I later found out that these holes were used to set the concrete bases that would hold new metal structures that they built to cover the backside of the girls' area. The teenagers were frequently threatened with extreme physical violence, including one survivor reporting that after she had attempted to run away, she was confined to the dog cages. Miguel had threatened to shoot her in the legs if she tried to escape again. Abuse and closure. High Impact is well known to have been an extremely abusive program. Detainees were expected to suffer through stress positions, sitting on concrete for many hours a day if they could not follow directions, or if the staff deemed it appropriate for any reason. Detainees would be tackled, restrained, and held in dog cages, or forced to sit or lay in stress positions in the hot desert sun for the least the remainder of the day, but usually for many days following. Injuries were very common at High Impact, including burns from the hot sun and sand, blisters, cuts, and scrapes. Major injuries have been reported as well, including spinal injuries, broken jaws, and other broken bones resulting from violent restraints. It is reported that injured teenagers did not receive any medical attention. According to survivors, restraint at High Impact was not used to restrain a child from any kind of destructive action, but instead was used as a punishment that the staff were all too trigger happy to dole out. The following is an account by a survivor of High Impact detailing the process of restraint there. I can't even count how many times I was restrained, but I remember that it was more than normal to be there, at least two or three different girls restrained on a daily basis. The first indication that you are about to be restrained is that the staff will scream at the top of their lungs, suelo, which is a Spanish word for ground. And every, oh, okay. Uh, when suelo was screamed, you would fall and hit the ground, and every kid in the compound would automatically drop to the ground where they stood and cover their faces with their arms. Imagine your sense of fear as you realize what was about to come next would be truly the most physically painful and emotionally torturous experience of your young life, and there was nothing you could do to stop it from happening. Call for help all you want, but nobody would hear you, and nothing you could do would stop the pain before the staff chose to release you. The first step was for the staff to swiftly tackle the child, usually from standing position to the ground. Once a child is on the ground, the staff, either in groups of two or three, would twist the limbs of the child into excruciatingly painful submissions. They would then apply a great deal of pressure on one knee that dug into the child's back while simultaneously holding the arms behind the back, pressing them the furthest they could stretch up back to the point where arms popped out of sockets and hands touched the back of the ears. Try putting your hands behind your back and reaching for your ears. Then slam your head down flat on the chin by pulling the hair into the rocky desert, as well as actually grinding the chin into the dirt, resulting in lacerations and loss of skin. The child didn't have to resist for this restraint to be violent. In fact, if a child wasn't moving or reacting, they would switch positions of restraint in order to ensure that the child is in continuous pain and wouldn't stop until the child stopped begging for mercy and crying, or if the staff simply became tired. I remember one time I exclaimed to the staff that I couldn't breathe, and they replied, "If you can't breathe, then why are you still screaming?" These restraints would often last anywhere from 20 minutes to hours. After the child stopped struggling, the staff would simply sit on top of the child in a hogtied position. After the staff determined that the child was adequately subdued, they would leave the child under staff supervision in a dog cage where the child would be instructed to either sit or lay in very painful positions for the rest of the day. And if it was determined that the child was not following directions, which meant even moving in the slightest way, the child would be subjected to another round of restraint. To this day, I suffer from a spinal injury that I sustained during that restraint that caused me a great deal of physical pain and labor limitations. On December 5th, 2001, Mexican authorities raided the facility following an investigation into the conditions and reports of child abuse at High Impact. According to an article from January 2002, child welfare workers found the conditions deplorable at High Impact. The officials found the children there extremely dirty, with many suffering injuries, including extreme sunburns and blisters. They also found children forced to lie on their stomachs with their chins on the ground for hours at a time. Mexican authorities said they found that tents had blown down and children had been forced to sleep in bathrooms, according to U.S. diplomats. Following the investigation, the teens at High Impact were taken into protective custody, according to the consulate. It was reported that some teenagers were transferred to other WASP facilities, including Tranquility Bay in Jamaica and Academy at Dundee Ranch in Costa Rica. High Impact was closed shortly after. Ken Kay, the president of WASP, was quoted shortly after High Impact's closure, disputing the allegations against High Impact, saying, "I mean, it was the cleanest place I ever saw." So that is the wiki on High Impact in Tecate, Baja California, Mexico. If you spent time at this program, have anything to add, have anything to say, drop it in the comments section below. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you want to see more of these wikis as well as more content about behavior modification programs, hit that subscribe button down below and ring the bell. And if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.